welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the Transformers Legacy Deluxe Class Dragstrip, our first Stunticon to be released as part of the upcoming MENASOR combiner, and I'm actually really looking forward to these guys. It's been quite some time since, of course, we've actually seen the Stunticons in the main line, and Hasbro, engineering-wise, have come on leagues and bounds since then, so really looking forward to seeing as to how that MENASOR actually turns out, and I'm going to be completely upfront with you guys and say this is a good figure. I know there were some of you that weren't too pleased with my take on Legacy skids, but in terms of an actual deluxe standard, I just didn't think it matched some of the previous figures that we'd seen in the War for Cybertron trilogy, whereas here with Dragstrip, I am glad to say that he is in fact a return to form. Not 100% perfect, and I think it's probably best that I get a few of my nitpicks out of the way to start off with, just so that we can then focus on the many positives. So right off the bat, I'm not a huge fan of these shoulder sections that we've got going on. These really are the only areas of which are incredibly inaccurate to his original character model. I would have loved them to have in fact actually found a way to have taken these and maybe reversed them so they could have stored away here on the back, as there's just so much room. So I definitely think that were possible, and you can see here for the actual placement of the wheels, I do not like how it just sort of sticks out at an angle. It's not blocked off like we actually saw from the character model, and from certain angles really does look rather untidy, but they really are my only major gripes. Other than that, I think this guy looks really awesome. You can see here for the head sculpt, loaded with paint as well as detailing, looking fantastic. Probably our best mainline drag strip that we've ever seen officially released. I think this guy's turned out great. One thing worth mentioning is that due to transformation, of course, the head actually becoming the pilot cockpit in vehicle mode, we do in fact actually get some hollowness going on here at the back. It's not a massive deal breaker. The head feels incredibly thick and durable, but that is one thing that I thought was just worth mentioning. You can see in terms of the back, he cleans up really nicely. We've of course got some hollow spacing going on here for the back of the arms, but not looking too bad overall. As we flip here to the front section, I think we've got a decent amount of paint going on for the torso, specifically would be there for that engine block. You can see loaded with detailing as well as paint, and we've also got this mustard color going around this section, which once again are not looking too bad at all. You can see the overall proportions appear to be almost spot on to the character model, which is great. You can see here for the arms, all looking great. We've got some really nice definition there to the actual bicep as well as to the forearm. And as we spin our attention down to the lower section of Dragstrip, really loving the sculpt work that we've got going on here for the shins and knees. I like how the actual wheel does indeed store along the side of the leg, much like we saw from the original animation. One thing worth mentioning is that due to transformation, we do get this hollowness, which in my opinion is sort of a revert back to some of the combiners that we were seeing in Combiner Wars. It's not a massive deal breaker, but once again was just something I thought was worth mentioning, and from this angle you literally cannot see it, so it's not a massive deal breaker. As we spin our attention here to the sides, you can see pretty filled out, really nice looking sculpt and paintwork, and the same can also be said here for the back of the leg. So in all, a few minor complaints, but for the most part a really nice looking deluxe, really cool looking Stunticon. Now in regards to articulation, he's in fact loaded with it. So here for the head, we have merely just got a swivel which can rotate the full 360. The arms can in fact rotate the full 360 here at the shoulder, although depending on how you have these in fact positioned, they can become slightly restricted. We of course do get a hinge joint here out to the side, as well as a rotation here at the bicep, 90-degree bend there at the elbow. Sadly no form of wrist rotation, and I do kind of think they maybe could have found a way to have in fact actually implemented that, so that is a little lackluster. But here for the waist, we of course do get a full 360 rotation. The legs can kick forwards that far as well as can kick back to that far. Of course you can do the splits, full rotation there at the thigh, as well as a 90-degree bend there at the knee, and the foot is really nicely articulated, so we get a pivot forwards and backwards, mainly due to transformation, as well as a fantastic ankle rocker pivot. So in all, once again, a very solid deluxe, definitely matches the standard that we had seen from some of those War for Cybertron figures, and in my opinion is probably one of the major highlights out of this first wave of deluxe legacy figures. Now of course Dragstrip comes with two weapons, those being incredibly G1 inspired. You can see of course we've got this amazing metallic purple going on here for this section, as well as the actual aiming section, and of course the blaster piece. I think that looks really nicely done. He does in fact actually come with a second one of these, so you can have him dual wielding these, and if you really wanted to, you could also combine them, which is definitely pretty cool. But of course many of you guys are probably just going to store them on the figure, so we can just snap them there into either of the fists. So let's bring out some comparisons, and then of course we'll go through the transformation. Sadly, I don't unfortunately own any of the previous versions of Dragstrip, nor any of the other Stunticons, so I can merely only compare him next to a few of the War for Cybertron Decepticons. So first up, here we have him next to the Leader Class Astro Train, Voyager Class Siege Megatron, and finally Kingdom's Earth Mode Sideswipe, just so you can see from a deluxe perspective how he stacks up, and definitely pretty decently sized. He is in fact a little bigger when in comparison here next to Sideswipe, so there definitely isn't a decline in scale, which is really awesome to see. So turning to transformation, to begin with, what I like to do is just center the head. We can then take these sections here, rotate those just like so, and of course come to this side and of course repeat the same process, so just rotate that all the way around. You'll then want to take this section here and just essentially hinge this down until it does click there into place. Come to this side and of course repeat the same process, just snap that in there. We can then turn our attention here to the legs, just hinge these sections down like so, rotate so that the front is now facing the back. We're then going to want to disengage this entire cockpit region, which can in fact actually be a little tricky to do, seeing as the hinge is very stiff, but you essentially just want to pull away here like so, hinge this section up, and it will in fact click there, and we can take the head and just reverse that and rotate that until this section is filled out. We're then going to want to turn our attention here to these sections, rotate just like so, and then hinge this here all the way up. And as we flip here to this side, you can see how we've got a tiny cutout that this section will in fact tab into. So just snap that in there, of course, snap here at the top, and then proceed to snap that section there into place. And then we can take the cockpit region, rotate this here like so, and then come here and essentially just collapse this down, and you can see how we've got a tab here that will peg into that slot, and the same on the opposite side. So just peg all of that in. We can then in fact actually click the legs here together, open out these panels, and then compress those, and you can see how these hooks will in fact peg into these slots. So just hook this over, snapping that there all into place, take these sections, snap those down, and then we have Dragstrip fully transformed up into his really awesome Formula 1-esque vehicle mode. Not looking too bad at all, and I actually think this here has turned out really nicely in regards to a six-wheeled racing car. Hasbro and Takara have definitely knocked it out of the park from pretty much every single angle. This looks near enough dead on to what we actually saw from the original character model. You can see the sculpt work, especially here from the top, looks really nicely done. The head, of course, does become the pilot seat for the cockpit, but once again, not looking too bad. You can see we've got some really nice metallic silver highlights in there, that mustard yellow going around this actual region, which actually picks out some of the sharper details of the sculpt. And as you guys know, I love metallic silver paint, so this engine block is just candy to the eyes. It looks really awesome. You can see some lovely sculpt work going along here for the actual top region. As we turn our attention here to the front, once more, very nice sculpt work, as well as the Decepticon insignia, which is indeed actually formed out of two components. Usually we tend to get a really nasty, ugly gap in the center, but this has actually turned out really nice. As we spin our attention to the side, sadly, the mushroom pegs are merely just cast out of yellow plastic, which really do stand out when in comparison to the black that we've got here for the larger rear wheel. And if they could have found a way to have painted these, this probably would have been a solid 10 out of 10 vehicle, as overall I think it's looking pretty awesome. As we spin our attention here to the back, you can see it does in fact actually conceal and fill up pretty nicely, and even here for the spoiler, you can see there's some pretty decent paint. And in regards to undercarriage kibble, there's literally none. This guy is dead flat, and in my opinion, that's a dead giveaway that all of these various ports are indeed going to help this guy to in fact combine with that rumoured upcoming Commander class Motormasters trailer in order to of course form MENASOR, which is really cool. So if that is to be the case, we're definitely in for an incredibly G1 accurate looking MENASOR, as of course in the show the actual Stunticons did essentially just attach onto the limbs of the trailer, which at the moment seems really promising. This guy can in fact actually glide along the ground with absolute ease, which is quite surprising once again to see, considering there is barely any clearance between the wheels and of course the base of the vehicle. And in regards to some weapon storage, we can take those two metallic dark energon infused blasters and just snap them there along the side. So overall, in regards to the vehicle mode, once again, definitely a really nice looking piece. Size comparison wise, I wasn't too sure as to who to pair him with, so I have just once again brought back in that Kingdom Earth mode sideswipe, just as I'm pretty certain many of you guys either own this mold or the Siege sideswipe, of which is the exact same size as this figure. So you can see in terms of Deluxe, definitely pretty decent. Of course, he's a little bit more slender of a design, but in terms of length, definitely on par. And I think in terms of plastic, once again, feels almost identical, if not a little heavier when in comparison to sideswipe. So all round, definitely a return to form for these Deluxes, and Dragstrip certainly has given me hope for not only the future Stunticons, but also for the Legacy line in general, as of course, in my opinion, we didn't get off to a great start with that Legacy skids. And so, some final thoughts for the Transformers Legacy Deluxe class Dragstrip. Overall, this is actually a really nice figure. I am surprised to say that he's turned out pretty awesome in regards to a Dragstrip. I think this is probably the best mainline version we've ever seen for this guy, and in all honesty, my expectations weren't that high, especially having just come off the review of Legacy skids. This guy is certainly a return to form and really does follow suit with some of those previous War for Cybertron offerings. I think in regards to bot mode, undoubtedly the best mainline release that we've ever seen for this guy. Of course, I still have a few gripes, most noticeably would be those shoulder pauldrons. I have no idea as to why they couldn't have found a way to in fact actually sword them on the back, and the placement of the upper wheels doesn't look the greatest, but honestly that's a minor critique for what is otherwise a pretty awesome figure. I think the head sculpt looks awesome, the torso looks great, the proportions for the most part are really nicely done. I think the paint, whilst sparingly used, has been used incredibly effective, especially in regards to, of course, the vehicle mode. Transformation, once again, on par with some of those previous War for Cybertron offerings, looks really awesome, I may add as well. Definitely a super awesome Stunticon vehicle mode, and really does match the character model as seen on the show. And in order to propel my excitement even further for this guy, he is in fact one of 5 Stunticons that we are expecting to see for Transformers Legacy that will no doubt result in a super awesome looking MENASOR. So overall, for those of you who are a fan of the original G1 series, you're a fan of some of those deluxe figures that we saw for the War for Cybertron trilogy, and you love the Stunticons, then Dragstrip is definitely one that I can highly recommend. Overall, he's a solid deluxe, really awesome robot mode, very awesome vehicle mode, and actually has a really cool transformation. I'd love to know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Do you guys agree with my thoughts in regards to Dragstrip being a really cool deluxe, or do you in fact actually find it to be slightly lackluster when in comparison to some of the previous deluxe offerings? I thank you guys all so much for watching, and until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.